Chapter 1901 Don't think that you've won. The entire inside of the box was rapidly tainted with a fiery world of pink and white. Both their silhouettes were completely swallowed by the flames. The two equally matched flames were burning and jostling at one another. The people watching the battle on the outside could not help feeling extremely stressed and anxious. It was especially obvious to the people from Shrek Academy. The light dark Douluo Lonyeyu had already passed away, so Yali could be said to be the only elder from Shrek remaining. She was the source of their inspiration. Don't let anything happen to her. Please don't let anything happen to the Holy Spirit Douluo. Yuna grabbed Tang Wulin's arm as if she was trying to transfer her strength to him. However, she could clearly feel that Tang Wulin's body was trembling and shaking violently. Tang Wulin felt his chest tightening. His adoptive mother was killed by the darkness blood demon before being saved by his birth father. It could be said that Yali was the closest thing he had to family on the Douluo continent. Yet, there was nothing he could do when Yali was facing a life and death situation. The victory in the struggle between the two clusters of flames was gradually decided. Although holiness had an obvious suppressive effect over evil, Yali was still weaker than the Ghost Emperor when it came to overall strength. The pink flares gradually gained the upper hand while the incandescent flares vanished. Over time, the flares inside the box weakened. Tang Wulin felt like his heart had rapidly fallen off a cliff. He was well aware of the significance of the situation. Moreover, it was already too late even if he wished to do something at that point. Why must it be like this? Tang Wulin closed his eyes in agony. It's over, mother. He. The Ghost Emperor's piercing laughter echoed through the entire scene. The flares weakened and his silhouette appeared once again. The Ghost Emperor appeared unusually shabby. The robe on his body had burned to ashes and his naked body was on display for all to see. His body was actually a skeleton shimmering with dazzling green radiance. He had abandoned a large portion of his physical form to bolster his cultivation. The skull beneath his body was covered in holes, and his suit of four-word battle armor had disappeared. It was apparent that he had ignited his battle armor completely during the brutal collision. Nevertheless, he was still the final victor anyhow. Yali's body had vanished completely. Holy Spirit Douluo, do you think you can burn me to death just by igniting everything of yours, including your soul? Even if you were a quasi-god, you don't stand a chance against me. I fused my skeleton with my armor so I could create my one-of-a-kind four-word battle armor. Death belongs to you after all. You won't be able to reunite with your damned husband. He still has a soul, but your soul has already been burned. You can only wail in pain and agony under my death flame. Tee. The Ghost Emperor laughed hysterically as if he was venting his pent-up anger. The people from Shrek Academy and the Tang sect were drowning in sorrow. Tang Wulin swayed his shoulder abruptly and struggled free from Yuna's hand. At that moment, he could not care about anything else. He did not care about the overall situation or the bet. He only wanted to seek revenge for his mother now. Wulin, don't be impulsive. It's not over yet. A voice came from beside him, and a huge hand gripped his other hand. His eyes reddened. Tang Wulin turned his head to the side and was met by the deep gaze of a heartless Douluo cowdadger. It's not over yet. Just as the words reverberated in his mind, all of a sudden, the Ghost Emperor's laughter came to a stop. It was as if he had just seen a ghost. How is that possible? You're still alive? Tang Wulin turned to look at the battlefield. A sparkle of white light suddenly appeared out of thin air in the box where the Ghost Emperor and the Holy Spirit Douluo had fought. The light was enshrouded by dark green radiance. The green radiance did not come from the Ghost Emperor's death flame. The death flame had an aura of death, but the light had a lively aura. In the next moment, a silhouette had struggled free from the white light and brazenly appeared before the Ghost Emperor. Could that really be the Holy Spirit Douluo Yali? As compared to before, her body seemed to be slightly illusionary. She did not look like a solid entity, but she appeared to be condensing gradually. Her four-word battle armor had vanished, but her body still existed. Her charming face had even cracked a mocking smile. Why don't you keep laughing? Yali said coldly. The Ghost Emperor behaved as if he had really seen a ghost. Astonished, he sputtered. How is it possible that you are not dead? Wasn't your soul extinguished? Yali said calmly. I saved the lives of countless people in my lifetime. Would I not have the ability to resurrect myself? I acknowledge that I'm genuinely not a match for you in a one-on-one battle. Even Brother Ming couldn't kill you in the past, let alone me. What a waste that all of you were too presumptuous to trap me in the tiny box with you. Now, this confined space is the only chance for me to kill you. This is because you will have nowhere to run. As she spoke, blazing flames rose from her body once again. The dazzling holy fire burst forth with an incomparably majestic pressure and swept toward the Ghost Emperor once again. The scene shocked every person there instantly. Who would have thought that the Holy Spirit Douluo actually possessed such an ability? The Ghost Emperor yelled, and his entire body glowed green. The many-hold skull underneath his body engulfed him rapidly and unleashed a burst of flames to resist the holy light's assault. With all of that, anyone observing could tell that both the flames unleashed by the Holy Spirit Douluo Yali and the Ghost Emperor's resistance had weakened substantially. After all, they did not have any battle armor to burn anymore, only their most innate powers. The two flames lashed at one another wildly in the box. They were both sparing no effort and risking their lives. They were not utilizing any skill or technique but their origin powers. The Ghost Emperor was still stronger than Yali due to his quasi-god ranked cultivation base. Had it not been that the Holy Spirit Douluo's holy power had an inherent suppressive effect over him, Yali did not stand a chance to win this battle. After all, one of them was a quasi-god and the other was a demigod. There was still a huge disparity between them. The holy light faded gradually and the green flares weakened greatly soon afterward. When the gigantic skull appeared before everyone's eyes once again, close to half of it had disintegrated completely. The Ghost Emperor reappeared on the top of the skull, his body looking quite tattered. His glossy bones had turned dim and dull as well. He had assumed that the 9 palace boxes was going to be his chance to kill the Holy Spirit Douluo. He thought it would be relatively simple, yet he had never expected that the 9 palace box would turn into his prison. There was nowhere to hide from Yali's life flame in this cage. Without even a place to run to, he could only endure it. It was like he had lifted a rock only to drop it on his feet. Is it over now? The Ghost Emperor lowered his head, ghost flames flickering in his eyes. He looked at his tattered body. He knew that his origin power had been injured, and even his soul was damaged to a certain extent. Even if he could recover from this, it would take countless years. His hopes of becoming a god were completely cut off by the burning of the holy flame. Although he relied on a variety of methods to manage the problems resulting from his cultivation process, his body was still constantly breaking down due to the influence of evil martial souls. It was already very hard for him to sustain his life. After being so severely injured, it was almost impossible for him to heal, and his heart was filled with a fearsome hatred. As he seethed with rage, the sparkle of white light suddenly illuminated before him. Don't think that you've won. Yali called out once again. When her body reappeared before the Ghost Emperor, the flames inside his pupils had revealed his despair. How is that possible? How did this happen? She is actually capable of resurrecting herself again? Chapter 1902 Die, Ghost Emperor. Yali smiled coolly. Her gaze was filled with mockery as she looked at the Ghost Emperor. I said that I would have revenge for Brother Ming today. Die, Ghost Emperor. The incandescent white flames rose once again, but they appeared to have weakened. Nevertheless, the Ghost Emperor had also been severely weakened after the previous 2 rounds. The people were watching the battle in amazement. The Ghost Emperor's body was bathed in the white fire, and a terrifying scream echoed across the battlefield. If the Holy Spirit Douluo's act of burning herself was not enough to kill the quasi-god, how about 3 Holy Spirit Douluos? Even if the Ghost Emperor was the superior fighter, there was nowhere for him to dodge within the narrow space. He was utterly incapable of evading 3 quasi-gods burning their lives alongside the incredible holy cleansing power. At last, he crumbled completely. This time, the burning lasted for only a brief moment. After what seemed like a few seconds, the white flame dissipated. On the other hand, not even a fragment of the Ghost Emperor's bones remained. In fact, even his soul was cleansed away completely by the white flame. The box they were in shattered soon afterward, and a spark of green radiance shot toward Tang Wulin all of a sudden. Tang Wulin raised his hand instinctively and caught it in his palm. Immediately, a familiar aura blew toward him. He was very familiar with that shade of green. It was the life subtree's leaf. Mother. Tang Wulin called out with a shaky voice. My silly son, don't be sad. I've placed my soul on this leaf. Please attach it to the Atlas Divine Sphere so I can be reunited with my brother Ming at last. I'm already content because I got my revenge for him. Everything else is up to you now. Yes, Yali died in the battle eventually. However, her soul did not burn to ashes as the Ghost Emperor had imagined. Yali has been carrying the life subtree's leaf with her so that she could immortalize her soul. This was also why she could resurrect herself twice in succession. She placed her soul on the life subtree's leaf. The Ghost Emperor did not realize that because it was too well hidden. However, a person's life force was still limited. After she burned her body in battle armor the first time, it was already an irreversible process. Her latter resurrections were only temporary reforming of her body so she could unleash her attack again. If she was burned to death during the first round, the Holy Spirit Douluo's body would still crumble long after she reformed it. She succeeded at last. Despite being weaker, she achieved victory. victory by utilizing the limitations imposed by the 9 palace boxes. She burned the Ghost Emperor to death and succeeded in getting revenge for the Atlas Douluo Yunning. This had always been her heart's greatest wish and it was finally fulfilled. The Holy Spirit cult's Ghost Emperor was dead. Shrek Academy's Holy Spirit Douluo Yali was dead. 2 more quasi-gods had fallen. This war was brutal beyond comparison. Tang Wulin's body was trembling ever so slightly. His lips were tightly pursed to prevent himself from shedding tears. As the leader of the powerhouses of humanity's forces, he knew that he had to stay strong. There would certainly be fatalities in this war. The might of their enemies had ensured that. Yet, it was one thing to understand but a completely different thing to accept. Moreover, the deceased was his closest kin. The Skycrosser Douluo and the ferocious wolf Douluo died in combat. The Holy Spirit Douluo fell in battle as well. The 3 great limit Douluos had fallen. While Yali passed away, the rest of the 8 battles were also in full swing. As Yali's 9 palace box was shattered, another 9 palace box shattered as well. A gold-red silhouette emitting scorching blood essence came charging out from the box. The silhouette descended just like a deity. It was the body Douluo ruling. His opponent was the darkness spell. If he could come out, it meant that the darkness spell must have been defeated. The darkness spell possessed only a hyper Douluo ranked cultivation base. She did not stand a chance in this match because she was fighting against the body Douluo with his leak-proof golden body. The 9 palace boxes had taken control of the battlefield, but it had also reduced the chance for every hyper Douluo to evade attacks. It ensured that the battles would end quicker. Arahang paid no attention to her attacks as he could simply endure them. The body Douluo then unleashed his blazing hot blood essence and powerful attacks on the darkness spell. The darkness spell was one of the 4 great heavenly kings of darkness that threatened Tang Wulin in the past. In the end, she was pulverized by A Ruing and died on the spot. What a waste that A Ruing was incapable of helping the others even though he had already ended his battle due to the 9 palace boxes. He could only wait anxiously for the rest on the outside. Boom. Boom. There were 2 more loud explosions. The father and son, Yuan and Zenshin and Yuan and Tiandang, charged out from the 9 palace boxes. Their opponents were relatively weaker abyssal kings. They combined their Titan Divine Punch with the power of their 4-word battle armors to achieve victory without being harmed and defeated the opponents. Tang Wulin's Golden Dragon Spear was already waiting. It swooped across the sky at once and devoured the abyssal energy. 2 more levels of the abyss collapsed soon afterward. 4 out of 9 battles had already ended. It could be said that Mankind's Legion had a clear advantage. Had it not been for the Holy Spirit Douluo's death, there would have been a cause for celebration. The passing of Shrek Academy's older generation limit Douluo, renowned for being the kindest person who ever lived, cast a shadow over everyone's heart. Meanwhile, the other 5 battles were still being fought intensely. The observers shifted their attention to the battle between the Sage Monarch and Lan Muzi. The other 5 battles consisted of Kaiangyu Diding versus the Underworld Emperor Underworld King Douluo Haluosa, the Darkness Blood Demon versus Kaiangyu Dongfang, and the Killing Douluo Tongyu versus an Abyssal King. Wang Kong was also fighting an Abyssal Monarch ranked powerhouse and Lan Muzi was up against the Sage Monarch. Kaiangyu Diding and the Underworld Emperor were locked together in a struggle while the Darkness Blood Demon and Kaiangyu Dongfang were considered a good match. Even though Kaiangyu Dongfang lost an arm, he became a limit Douluo earlier after all. The Darkness Blood Demon was overwhelmed when he fought against the amorous Douluo before. Both parties were considered equally matched at the moment. Tongyu gained the obvious upper hand, so it was only a matter of time before he won. The battle between Wang Kong and the Monarch ranked powerhouse had yet to reveal the victor and loser after all this time. The only battle not going well was the fight between Lan Muzi and the Sage Monarch. The 9 palace box was the Sage Monarch's domain. No one was more familiar with it than it was. Hence, almost all the pairings had been decided by it. Even though it did not control all of the pairings, it still had full control over its own opponent. Naturally, it chose the weakest opponent. Lan Muzi had always been the senior disciple brother in the inner court of Shrek Academy with profound hidden skills. Before Tang Wulin entered Shrek Academy, he was considered a possible successor to the Sea God's Pavilion Master. He was capable of making revolutionary elevations rapidly and his abilities were constantly improving as well. His fame was universally acclaimed by the members of the inner court and he had always been working hard for them. His son Wood Saber was so powerful that he managed to defeat a powerhouse from the Spirit Pagoda in the past. Nevertheless, the opponent that he was fighting against at this point was truly too fearsome. The Sage Monarch ranked 5th among the 10 great Abyssal Monarch ranked powerhouses. Its rank was even superior to the Abyssal Demon Puppet. Judging purely based on fighting capability, it was not considered outstanding among the 10 great monarchs, but it had incredible controlling skills. One should not forget that it was ranked 5th despite its entire clan comprising itself alone and no other clansmen. The Spirit Monarch and Sage Monarch were the right-hand men of the Abyssal Sage King. The Spirit Monarch had died in battle, so the Sage Monarch could be seen as the second in command of the Abyss. The Abyssal Plane had always had a close relationship with the Holy Spirit cult. In fact, the 3 rounds of decisive battles had actually been proposed by the Sage Monarch. Of course, it was proposed by the Sage Monarch in the name of the Abyssal Sage King, but the humans were unaware of this. Chapter 1903 Don't struggle anymore. At that point, the Sage Monarch appeared to be extremely calm, imposed as it was fighting against Lan Muzi. On the other hand, Lan Muzi appeared to be cautious and hesitant in the battle. The Sage Monarch's lizard head was a strange dark blue color at the moment with a faint glow on the surface. Every time one of the 9 palace boxes exploded, colorful scales would emerge on its face. Its combat technique was quite ghastly. In the 9 palace box, roughly about 100 square meters in size, the Sage Monarch dodged and evaded continuously by constantly transforming itself. Every time Lan Muzi thrust his son with saber, the Sage Monarch's body would flicker as it dodged to the side. Lan Muzi could clearly feel that his soul power was depleting rapidly. He launched an endless tide of attacks, yet he was weakening. On the other hand, the Sage Monarch merely changed its form endlessly and remained quite calm. Lan Muzi was surprised to find that his soul power was depleting inside the 9 palace box, and there was nothing he could do to recuperate. At his rank, he could rely on the soul core inside his body and could even produce some energy to replenish a portion of his lost soul power. Then, he could utilize heaven and earth power to replenish himself. Nevertheless, there seemed to be some unique law that influenced the 9 palace box so that there was nothing he could do to recover. Thus, his soul power was weakened substantially after unleashing more than 10 consecutive attacks. Lan Muzi had no choice but to stop. If he were to continue using up his energy, perhaps he would not last for a long time. His opponent would not even need to make a move. It was his first time fighting against an opponent that adopted such an unusual technique. Moreover, he realized that his battle armor domain could not be utilized inside the 9 palace. He was being severely hindered. The Sage Monarch cracked into a smile upon noticing that Lan Muzi stopped. You're not going to attack anymore? Do you think that this is going to work? As it spoke, it raised its right hand and conjured something out of thin air. At once, a staff appeared in its grasp. This had been the moment when the battle between the Holy Spirit Douluo Yali and the Ghost Emperor ended. Some colorful scales returned to the Sage Monarch's face. The scales swiftly flew onto the staff in his hand and emitted a multicolored radiance. The Sage Monarch pointed in the direction of Lan Muzi. At once, Lan Muzi felt a strong force pushing against him, and he was sent flying backward. The force seemed to occupy the core area of the box, so there was nowhere he could hide. Moreover, the force was tremendous. In fact, it felt familiar to him. It was obviously similar to his soul power. Lan Muzi raised the sun with saber and unleashed the triple layered sun pass. The Sage Monarch teleported and appeared at a corner on the other side. The staff in his hand glowed brightly, and a glowing screen of light appeared. Lan Muzi felt his movements suddenly slow as if he was sinking into a mud pond. It was different from ordinary control type cell skills. Lan Muzi felt as if his body was stuck to something. The force came from all directions and began pulling at his body parts simultaneously. He had no idea how to struggle free even if he wanted to. It felt like his hands and legs were tied. The sun with saber shined and sent out rays of green light in an attempt to weaken the opponent's constraints. Even with that, the control cell skill pulled him so tightly that he could not budge at all. The Sage King on the other side remained still as he levitated. It's useless. Trying to escape is futile. My control results in absolute immobility. Unless you're a god, you can't possibly struggle free. Of course, I can also tell you that I can't struggle free either when I'm controlling you, but you're in my 9 palace box. Your power will be drained continuously and siphoned to me. I'm not in a rush at all. Struggle all you want. The energy you unleash will become a part of me too. The Sage Monarch's mocking voice reverberated in Lan Muzi's ears. If Lan Muzi was an impatient man, perhaps his state of mind would have been in a bad place at that point. Lan Muzi was already a very steady-tempered person, but it was still agony for him to engage in such an unusually unpleasant battle with the Sage Monarch. He was trying his best to calm his mind. He had witnessed the Holy Spirit Douluo's death, and he was feeling determined in his heart. All he needed was a chance to fight back, but it was apparent that the opponent before him would not be giving him such a chance. Lan Muzi felt puzzled in his heart. Judging from the current situation, the possibility of Mankind's Legion achieving victory in the second round of the competition was still high. Even if the Sage Monarch were to defeat him, the opposing team had not managed to gain the upper hand in the rest of the battles taking place inside the 9 palace boxes. After all, the Ghost Emperor was already dead. On the other hand, there were still numerous limit Douluos on his team. Despite all that, he could tell that the Sage Monarch was not in no rush judging from its tone. It felt as if the Sage Monarch was fine with losing so many Abyssal Kings. He knew nothing of the opponent's role in the Abyssal Plane, but judging by the current situation, the Sage Monarch was obviously the main player in this bet. Indeed, he speculated that the Sage Monarch was superior to the Underworld Emperor and the Ghost Emperor. This signified that Sage Monarch must have a prime place in the Abyssal Plane. This particular Abyssal powerhouse was so calm during the battle. It was apparent that Sage Monarch was scheming something. All of you are destined to fail. Even if you manage to kill me, you can't change the situation, Lan Muzi said coldly when he suddenly stopped struggling. The suction force continued pulling at his body, but he could still stabilize himself. The Sage Monarch seemed to be enjoying the conversation. It tilted its head and said to him, "Are you trying to probe me to see if I have any schemes because you see how unconcerned I am?" Lan Muzi was surprised. His gaze changed ever so slightly as he looked at the Sage Monarch. The Sage Monarch widened its mouth as if it was smiling, but any expression made by its hideous lizard face looked ferocious. It's useless. Firstly, your voice can't be heard outside of here. The 9 palace box where we are now is the epicenter of the array. This is equal to being my domain. If I don't allow your voice to be transmitted to the outside, it won't be. Thus, your companions can't possibly hear from you even if you were to learn anything. Hence, whatever you are trying to do, your efforts will be futile. Just wait for your death patiently and don't waste your strength. Lan Muzi said calmly, "So why haven't you killed me yet? I can feel that you should be able to do that." The Sage Monarch said, "You have very sharp senses." That's right. It's not a difficult matter to kill you, only that it is going to be tiring for me to do so right now. I can't exhaust myself yet as I have more important matters to attend to. Thus, we are not in a rush. I will kill you when the rest of the battles have ended. Behave yourself and I might create a scene of you perishing together with me intentionally. Lan Muzi's eyes flickered. Us perishing together? You're saying you have a way to extricate yourself? The Sage Monarch said, "Yes, of course. In fact, I might allow that human of yours to devour some abyssal energy and I can even simulate the collapse of my abyssal level. Don't you worry. I won't let them notice anything. All of you will surely win this round. I wasn't planning on winning the bet anyway because this is not important." Lan Muzi felt chills run down his spine. What is important then? Since there's nothing I can do to transmit my voice, why don't you tell me about it so I can die knowing the truth? The Sage Monarch shrugged. It's fine for me to tell you actually. However, I bet you won't understand even if I were to explain. Lan Muzi said coldly, "How will you know if I'll understand if you don't tell me?" The Sage Monarch smiled. "This is all for show. All the bets are the same. Do you understand? A show." Lan Muzi looked at it in astonishment. Sacrificing the lives of so many of your abyssal powerhouses and allowing the collapse of the abyss are all just for show? Chapter 1904 The show. The Sage Monarch said, "That's right. Otherwise, how could we kill so many people? Furthermore, how would we make mankind and the Holy Spirit cult trust us without putting on such a display? This is but a show. All the deaths are nothing but the prelude." Bone-piercing coldness arose slowly in Lan Muzi's chest. It was but a show? Moreover, it was put on not only for them but also for the Holy Spirit cult. What was the Abyssal Plane trying to achieve? This meant so many powerhouses from the Abyss were kept in the dark. They were even willing to sacrifice their own. All of a sudden, an idea emerged in Lan Muzi's mind. He almost could not control the words that came from his mouth. "Is this related to the Abyssal Sage King?" The Sage Monarch gave out a giggle. "You're very smart. Of course, this is the Sage King's show. The Sage King is not here, but everything that happens here is within the Sage King's control. It has already been 6,000 years since your world has been discovered. For this invasion, we have been preparing for far too long. The Holy Spirit cult is trying to use us. But how could we not use them just as well? Only the real Lord of the Plane will understand the mysteries of the plane. It's funny that the Demon Empress still assumes that she understands everything just because she has achieved God rank. She is but just a pawn in this grand show." Lan Muzi was shocked. "So why are you putting on this show then?" The Sage Monarch rolled its eyes. "You know enough already. Although you're surely going to die, I won't let you have any chance to pass the message to the outside using some other method. Thus, that's all you get to know. Look, more and more of them are dead. All shall die. Isn't that great?" The Sage Monarch's words sounded rather baffling, but Lan Muzi could obviously feel that everything it had said contained a deeper meaning. He just could not comprehend it. What was the meaning behind the Sage Monarch's revelation? The people watching the battle on the outside found it extremely strange that their fight suddenly halted. They could see that Lan Muzi seemed to be conversing with the Sage Monarch, yet they could not hear anything. All of a sudden, Lan Muzi suddenly struggled and thrust the sunward saber once again. The blade turned dark green when he wielded it. Thick life source burst forth and wove itself into countless glowing forms in the sky. Although Lan Muzi had not managed to break free from the control, he had aimed the saber at the opponent. The Sage Monarch's silhouette flickered as he transformed himself continuously inside the box. The fine and dense saber's radiance was incredibly strong, but there was nothing he could do to hit the Sage Monarch. It dodged the attacks agilely like a fish moving through water. Regardless of how hard Lan Muzi tried, none of his attacks landed on the Sage Monarch. Lan Muzi suddenly stopped attacking and turned around. He made hand gestures to mankind's legion through the box. However, he had just begun making the hand gesture when the Sage Monarch raised the staff in his hand. He conjured a vortex-shaped energy construct. It blasted him away, putting a stop to his hand gesture. Tang Yimeng was standing with the group from Shrek Academy when this happened. When she saw Lan Muzi was trapped, she clenched her fists tightly. She could tell what her husband was fighting against. Of course, her eyes were ablaze as she watched the situation inside the box. She was tearing up and her body was shivering ever so slightly. However, she did not utter a single word and she had no intention of charging outside impulsively. The Jade Snake Sengyuan was standing by her side with her hands on Tang Yimeng's shoulders. She wanted to give Tang Yimeng some support, but Tang Yimeng did not move at all. She was just staring straight at the box where Lan Muzi was with a deathly gaze. After being blasted away, Lan Muzi swung the sunward saber once again. He unleashed all sorts of formidable attacks such as the triple-layered sun pass and the 6906, continuously in an attempt to struggle free from the Sage Monarch's control. He pushed the opponent back and then he tried to make a hand gesture to the outside. Every time he attempted to do this, he would be blasted away by the Sage Monarch's vortex energy, so he could not complete even one hand gesture. Anyone could tell that the Sage Monarch had full control over this battle. Lan Muzi did not stand a chance to win. Everyone was also confused as to why the Sage Monarch had yet to defeat Lan Muzi. Meanwhile, the other battles were at their climax. In the battle between Kaiengu Daiding and the Underworld Emperor, both sides were equally matched. If one were to say that the Underworld Emperor had an edge at the beginning, the broken Underworld Kingsword had affected him tremendously. He was fighting against Kaiengu Daiding's coiling dragon staff. Both sides were in an intense battle and they were just about to end up wounding and defeating each other. Kaiengu Daiding's attacks had unleashed all of his abilities, not holding back at all. He went all out to use every skill and utilized the combat heaven and earth coiling dragon staff technique to perfection. Each attack was done in an almost frenzied state. Though the Underworld Emperor's Underworld Kingsword managed to leave behind many wounds on his body, the Underworld King Douluo Haluosa was lashed by his staff thrice as well. Haluosa's battle armor had shattered, and both of their auras were weakening continuously. Only one person was meant to leave the 9 palace box alive, and Haluosa was going all out as well. The Underworld Kingsword shot out continuous streams of deathly radiance. Both parties were colliding so ferociously that the 9 palace box was shaking violently. The battle between Kaiengu Dongfeng and the Darkness Blood Demon was at a stalemate as well. Kaiengu Dongfeng's will to fight had been far less than Kaiengu Daiding. Compared to his father, he treasured his life even more. As it turned out, only one person would survive the 9 palace box. As a result, his will to fight was fully triggered. He would die if the Darkness Blood Demon was not killed. How could he not go all out? This had also allowed him to express the unique features of the coiling dragon staff. At that point, Kaiengu Dongfeng's body was coiled with black energy. It was the Darkness Blood Demon's killing curse, and it was gradually weakening him. However, the Darkness Blood Demon was not feeling so well either. Although his fighting capacity was quite impressive, he was not really a close combat type soul master. He was retreating when he was confronted by the magnificent coiling dragon staff. Boom. Separate heaven and earth was unleashed. The coiling dragon staff smashed down ferociously. The darkness blood demon was blasted back at the sound of the boom, and he slammed into the edge of the box. However, he made a few hand gestures at the exact moment he was blasted away. 7 curses landed on Kaiangyu Dongfang in succession. The darkness blood demon's battle armor had been badly crushed. Kaiangyu Dongfang's forward battle armor was also covered in dents due to the curses. The darkness blood demon wiped away the blood at the corner of his lips. Brutal radiance was seen shimmering in his eyes. Kaiangyu Dongfang, when I die, you won't live either. Kaiangyu Dongfang grunted coldly. Just with your curses? My forward battle armor is enough to withstand most of your curses. Your efforts are futile. You will only damage my armor at most, but you will definitely be slain. A wisp of ghastliness was seen in the darkness blood demon's expression. Is that so? Have you forgotten that I'm an evil soul master? We are cruel to every living soul, and we are even crueler to ourselves. If I am destined to die, could it be that I'm not allowed to drag someone down with me? Do you think that only the people from Shrek Academy and the Tang sect know how to go all out? We are able to do that too. Kaiangyu Dongfang, die. As the darkness blood demon spoke, the ninth soul ring on his body exploded without warning, and his entire body turned black red. Intense fear gripped Kaiangyu Dongfang's heart. He yelled and held the coiling dragon staff in his hand desperately. His aura was surging wildly and his battle armor was burning. He devoted every effort to let loose the most powerful attacks that he had. There was no doubt that the opponent was about to go all out by detonating his soul ring. The darkness blood demon was determined and showed no hesitation. So how could Kaiangyu Dongfang not feel astonished? On the other hand, the fear in his heart dispersed the core depth and courage of the coiling dragon staff. Kaiangyu Dongfang was aware that his current form would weaken his abilities. After all, he was only human. He was incapable of controlling this even if he wanted to. When Kaiangyu Dongfang was young, he had a remarkable amount of natural talent with abilities that far surpassed his peers. He had also inherited the clan's martial soul, the coiling dragon staff. He lived in unparalleled limelight. Chapter 1905 perished together. In terms of his natural endowment and comprehension, he was superior to his father Kaiangyu Daiding. He was recognized by his clan and the high-ranking personnel from the Spirit Pagoda. However, was Kaiangyu Dongfang, who was already the Spirit Pagoda's Pagoda master for so many years and capable of becoming a quasi-god ranked limit Douluo. It was not a problem with his natural endowment nor did he lack effort. It was his temperament. Although he possessed the coiling dragon staff equipped with the combat heaven and earth consciousness, he was not desperate enough to sacrifice himself by going all out during a battle. He was not a coward who feared death, but he cherished himself too much. Thus, he was never able to do it. Based on natural endowment, there was a huge disparity between him and Kaiangyu Kingfeng, who possessed the Purgatory G martial soul. Yet, their final abilities were on par since Kaiangyu Dongfang could not find the spirit which belonged to the coiling dragon staff all this while. In the past, Kaiangyu Dongfang did not regret this. In his view, he could perhaps be a quasi-god if he possessed the attributes of persistence and self-sacrifice. Nevertheless, he would most likely have died many times over. After all, more than 2/3 of the Kaiangyu clan's powerhouses from Kaiangyu Daiding's generation had died during their training. Kaiangyu Daiding was the only person who managed to break through the siege to become a quasi-god with some luck and providence. Kaiangyu Dongfang prided himself for being the Spirit Pagoda's Pagoda master. He did not have much opportunity to engage in a battle personally. He was in pursuit of the god rank which he hoped to carry out safely. Yet, he now had his regrets. It was his first time to experience such intense remorse. He realized that he was wrong. He was so very wrong. He wanted to go all out, but the fear in his heart had somehow stopped him from expressing the coiling dragon staff's true profundity. He did not have any companion nor the Spirit Pagoda's protection inside the Nine Palace box. His power was the only thing he could depend on. However, intense fear filled his heart. How could he possibly express his abilities at present? Sacrifice oneself, sacrifice first, and receive later. He realized that he was wrong after all. Yet, it was one thing to understand, but a whole different thing to do it. It was already too late for everything. The black-red color condensed into a gigantic water drop bursting with energy inside the Nine Palace box. It hovered in the air. The darkness blood demon's body melted away completely into a horrendous drop of liquid. 2 dark red objects which looked like a pair of eyes suddenly appeared in the black-red liquid. It gazed closely at Kaiangyu Dongfang. At that very instant, Kaiangyu Dongfang felt like he could not even move his soul. The coiling dragon staff which was swung at full force set off an energy storm inside the Nine Palace box. The dark red color fused into every corner of the Nine Palace box akin to quicksilver which had spilled onto the ground. The darkness blood demon's ghastly cold voice was heard. Blood demon curse. Crack. A sickening sound was heard. Kaiangyu Dongfang's body was frozen in a corpse-like posture. He could not move at all and he appeared exceedingly strange. In the next moment, the entire Nine Palace box crumbled and the black-red color inside the Nine Palace box dispersed and vanished soon after. Kaiangyu Dongfang had melted away too. Everything inside the box had vanished into nothingness. The leader of the Holy Spirit cult's 4 great heavenly kings of darkness, the darkness blood demon was dead. The ex-Pagoda master of the Spirit Pagoda, Kaiangyu Dongfang had also fallen. 2 more great limit Douluo ranked powerhouses had left the world eternally. Grandfather. A bitter cry was heard. It drew the attention of the people. Kaiangyu's hunting transformed into a ray of light shooting straight toward the battlefield. Tang Wuling frowned ever so slightly. He stretched out his hand to grasp at thin air. A gush of tremendous suction force instantly immobilized Kaiangyu's hunting's body in the air to stop him from engaging in the battlefield. It was the Tang sect's technique, the controlling crane capturing dragon. The controlling crane capturing dragon unleashed by Tang Wuling with his current cultivation base was spectacular. He had pulled Kaiangyu's hunting back by force. Kaiangyu's hunting roared at him in rage. Let go of me, BSD Road. Let go of me. I'm going to avenge my grandfather. Ugh. A muffled voice was heard. Kaiangyu's hunting's body went limp in the air. Du Yuna appeared behind him without him noticing and had knocked him unconscious with a hand blow. Tang Wuling took a glance at Kaiangyu's hunting. If they had been somewhere else, he might have lost control of himself and beat up this man. After all, he was a part of the Kaiangyu clan, not to mention the fact that Tang Wuling considered him his love rival. However, mankind's legion was currently bound by a common hatred for the enemy. All personal grudges must be put aside first. Du Yuna handed Kaiangyu's hunting over to someone from the Spirit Pagoda before she returned to Tang Wuling once again. Everyone's mind was weighed down with anxiety. Even though the powerhouses from the Abyssal Plane and the Spirit Pagoda were dying one after another, mankind's legion had paid an agonizing and tremendous price too. Tang Wuling was not bothered by Kaiangyu Dongfang's death, of course. However, he had yet to recover from the grief he felt after the Holy Spirit Douluo passed away earlier. Although the Holy Spirit Douluo managed to retain her soul, which was reunited with Yang Ming inside the Atlas Divine Sphere, she had finally left this world for good. At the same time, Lan Muzi, who was resisting at full force inside the Nine Palace box, finally gave in. Piercing dark green flames burned. It was his life flame. The sunward saber turned into a gigantic, fiery long knife moving downward in a chopping motion. A voice was simultaneously heard coming from the Nine Palace box for the first time. It was the agonizing cry of the Sage Monarch. It was engulfed in dark green flames. Lan Muzi took a last glance in the direction of Tang Yumeng. It was a gaze filled with complex emotions and an unwillingness to part. In the next moment, the Nine Palace box collapsed. The green flames vanished together with the Sage Monarch. There was nothing left, except for some remnant of abyssal energy escaping into the air. Did they perish together? The abyssal Sage Monarch was dead. The Sea God's Pavilion members of Shrek Academy, the senior brother disciple of the Inner Court, Lan Muzi had also fallen. Brother Lan. Tang Yumeng cried out in grief. Her vision went dark as she fainted in Zhang Yuren's arms. Shrek Academy had just lost another courageous personnel. Tang Wuling closed his eyes in agony. His fists were tightly clenched. Yet, there was nothing he could do now. Undoubtedly, mankind's legion would achieve victory in this round of the matches. When Lan Muzi died, the Killing Douluo Tongmu had finished off his opponent and left the battlefield. The 3 great limit Douluos and the body Douluo ruling waited at mankind's side of the periphery. If an enemy were to come out alive, it could not possibly escape their encirclement. Meanwhile, the remaining battles continued. The remaining battles were Kaiangyu Daiding versus the underworld King Douluo Haluosa and Wang Kong against his opponent. On the other hand, the 3 great limit Douluos and the body Douluo ruling each defeated their respective opponents. Out of the 7 battles which ended earlier, Lan Muzi, Kaiangyu Dongfang, Yali, and their opponents perished together. It was indeed a tragedy. Haluosa's situation got worse since Kaiangyu Daiding had been going all out since the beginning. Both of them were equally matched, yet he made the same mistake as Kaiangyu Dongfang. He was hoping to find an escape route for himself. Yet, he soon realized that it was non-existent. Since the 9 palace boxes were created by an ally, it was considered fair that only one person would leave the 9 palace box alive. Thus, Douluo also went all out as well. They inflicted injuries on each other. It was a matter of who could endure more injuries. The battle armor on his body was already tattered in the meantime. The biggest problem of the 9 palace box was that there was no adequate space to dodge or evade attacks. It restricted the agility type soul masters the most since they required vast spaces to move. Although Douluo had transcended the ordinary agility type soul master's rank, he still belonged to the agility system after all. His aura began to weaken from the increasingly reckless fight. At the same time, Dou did not have any intention to slow down. He continued to launch his wild attacks. Chapter 1906 Wang Kong versus the Transform Monarch. He had witnessed Dongfang's death as well. Yet, the spirit pagoda's previous pagoda master seemed to be oblivious to the incident. Dou was persistent. Actually, he was prepared to sacrifice himself when he decided to take part in this war. On the other hand, the situation with Wang Kong was a deadlock. Wang Kong's opponent was an abyssal powerhouse with a tall and muscular body. Its entire body was emitting a ghoulish cold aura. It appeared quite similar to an ordinary human, unlike the Sage Monarch's dysmorphism. It was over 2.5 meters in height, and its entire body was all bulging with muscles. The most scary part about this powerhouse was its arms. Its arms were constantly changing forms and turned into all kinds of weapons while fighting against Wang Kong. Its cold eyes flickered with a yellow glint. It was locked in a struggle with Wang Kong. The Skyfrost Dragon Ice 4-word battle armor was cladded on Wang Kong's body. Wang Kong's capability could rival a limit Doulo's. His eyes were shining bright akin to the stars in the night sky. The Skyfrost sword in his hand unleashed layers of a mesh which was used to enshroud the opponent. At present, he was in a peculiar state of mind. It seemed like his mind had cleared. Ever since Longbing's death, it was his first time experiencing this feeling. Perhaps it was because when he killed the darkness hummingbird, a heavy boulder was lifted completely which had burdened his heart all this while. Thus, the way he was wielding the Skyfrost sword in his hand seemed as effortless as moving his fingers. He expressed his repertoire of abilities and soul skills to perfection. His opponent was ranked 7th of the 10 great abyssal monarchs. It was named the Transform Monarch due to its ability to perform a myriad of changes. It was skilled in transforming itself into different combat modes. The most scary part about the Transform Monarch was its ability to emulate the combat abilities of the creature which he had transformed into. Just like now, its pair of upper limbs turned into the Sickle Emperor's front claws. Every time it stabbed forward with its arms, an incredibly sharp aura was unleashed. The 2 cuts on Wang Kong's Skyfrost Dragon Ice battle armor were made by the pair of sickles. The absolute zero temperature did not affect the Transform Monarch greatly. As one of the great monarchs, it had superb physical immunity. At present, the Transform Monarch charged forward inside the 9 palace box. Its pair of arms took the form of 2 sickles stabbing at Wang Kong. The air was shredded. The abyssal evil sickle clan was most skilled in short distance combat. It sprinted forward to attack. The attack was fast and ferocious. Wang Kong took a half step back. He held the Skyfrost sword with his hands and tilted the sword in an upward lifting motion. Clang! A violent, loud boom was heard. Wang Kong retreated at the sound of the boom. The Skyfrost sword in his hands shook violently. He flapped the wings on his back and utilized the Ghost Shadow Perplexing track to transport himself to the back of his opponent instantly. It was a close call. Although the space inside the 9 palace box was narrow, the Ghost Shadow Perplexing track was particularly well suited for close combat in such situations. It could turn around an adverse situation. As Wang Kong swung the shaking Skyfrost sword in his hand, he dodged the opponent's consecutive attacks simultaneously. He unleashed the Frost Sun Moon and instantly projected 9 giant swords to stab toward the Transform Monarch. At the same time, a large puff of frosted mist burst forth from his body such that it filled the entire 9 palace box to block the Transform Monarch's senses. The Transform Monarch could not charge forward any longer, so it swayed its body once. Its back suddenly bulged and transformed into a gigantic shell. 9 loud booms were heard in succession. Its body swayed, but it was not injured. This was the Abyssal Clan's transformation with the most powerful defense. Not only that, the Transform Monarch's upper limbs which had transformed into sickles initially transformed once again. It turned into human hands. However, it appeared odd as its arms were as slim as a woman's. It drew a circle in the air to conjure a black hole in front of itself. A powerful devouring force sucked in a substantial portion of the ice mist such that the view inside the 9 palace box cleared up once again. It was the Black Monarch's devouring power. The most incredible part about the Transform Monarch was the myriad of transformations it could execute. It was capable of utilizing the abilities of almost all the abyssal leaders. Unfortunately, it could not utilize 100% of its effects. Wang Kong discovered through observation that when the Transform Monarch emulated the abyssal leaders, there would be a difference in the strengths of its attacks. For example, it was only 80% efficient in the use of the Sickle Monarch's sickle arms. In the case of the Black Monarch, as it was quite different from the Transform Monarch, it could only utilize about 50% of the Black Monarch's power at most. However, it was still effective in removing the ice mist. The toughest part of fighting against the Transform Monarch was its ability to use the most effective transformation with near perfect timing. Wang Kong was used to his ice mist being devoured. He did not stop, but his Skyfrost sword was halted in midair. All of a sudden, the 6th soul ring on his body glowed brightly. He unleashed his 6th soul skill, the condensed frost. The surrounding air turned cold rapidly. Meanwhile, a radiance could be seen on the surface of the Skyfrost sword. It was becoming more vivid. At the same time, Wang Kong activated the absolute zero temperature. All at once, the temperature in the 9 palace box dropped to absolute zero. The Transform Monarch's body turned dense and heavy. A pair of wings grew out of its back, and it charged forward forcefully. The absolute zero temperature did it no harm, although it did slow down its movements. At the same time, it found out that the lower the temperature, the more powerful Wang Kong's Skyfrost sword became. Thus, it needed to interrupt Wang Kong's condensed frost first. The frost scars shot out from the sword and weaved into a dense mesh in the air. Wang Kong's body turned illusory soon after. It was precisely then the Skyfrost Dragon Ice battle armor on his body became illuminated. A ring of frosted, flower-shaped white halos spread out from underneath his feet. In no time, it spread into every corner of the 9 palace box. If the absolute zero temperature were a domain, then the inside of the entire 9 palace box would already be transformed into a world of ice and snow the moment the frosted flowers bloomed. An incomparably rich ice element filled every crack inside the 9 palace box. Wang Kong felt as if he had returned to his past of white robes and blue sword with the ice and snow world in his background. If one thought that the absolute zero temperature earlier was not the true absolute zero, one would be truly convinced now. Despite the Transform Monarch's cultivation base, it felt that its movements were severely restricted. The frost scars had actually cut into its defense and left behind scarred lines on the snow-covered land. The icy cold was biting and it seemed like the terrifying tearing force was about to cut the entire world apart. The Transform Monarch stopped charging abruptly since it sensed the intense threat at this very moment. Its thick and heavy body transformed into an incomparably fat figure all of a sudden. How would one describe its figure now? It took up more than half the space in the 9 palace box instantly. Its incredibly obese body emitted a strong stench. Its fat body looked like it had been sewn from pieces of fat tissue thrown together. The frost scar cut down huge chunks of lard from its pudgy body. As soon as the fat was cut off, it would emit a toxic stench. It was a barn. It was one of the powerful abyssal creatures which Tang Wuling had engaged with in the past, only that an ordinary barn was not as hefty as this. The Transform Monarch was emulating the King of Barn at the moment. He was also known as the Bar Emperor. The Bar Emperor was far inferior when compared to the Transform Monarch's cultivation base. However, the Bar Emperor possessed an extremely powerful ability which was regeneration. If one were to compare the abyssal creature's survival abilities, the Bar Emperor was definitely at the top of the list. Thus, the Transform Monarch immediately took the Bar Emperor's form when it sensed that something was wrong. The frost scars cut and slashed at full speed, but the Bar Emperor's toxic gas rapidly filled up the space as well. Moreover, its fatty flesh was regenerating at a shocking speed. The vital part of the Bar Emperor was its heart. It was extremely difficult to locate the Bar Emperor's heart from its enormous, fat body. It was also capable of shifting its heart to different locations spontaneously. Chapter 1907 Sealed in Ice. On the other hand, Wang Kong was willfully ignorant of everything that was happening. Under the elevation of the double domains, which were the absolute zero temperature in the ice and snow world, his body began to turn ice blue just as his long hair turned white soon after. On his left chest area of the battle armor, a pattern was slowly emerging on the surface. It was the image of a woman taking shape upon closer inspection. The pattern had been engraved on the battle armor by Wang Kong himself. His icy cold gaze suddenly became gentle at this very moment. There was a faint smile on his lips. Although he was in the world of ice and snow, it felt as if spring had returned when he cracked into a smile. The suave Wang Kong transformed into a deity at this very moment. His gaze was gentle yet pure without being tainted by the dust of the mortal world. It felt as if his entire person had transcended the world. Long Bing, my wish is already fulfilled. There's nothing in this world that is worth living for anymore. I've never loved another woman other than you. Yet, you left me so. Now's finally the time for me to come and look for you. Though I don't have anything, I've lived in purity all this while. I wonder if you miss me. At this point, his gaze revealed a longing for her. His yearning all these years was fully unleashed at this instant. His voice was very soft. Only he could hear it. However, his emotional expression was unprecedented such that it infected every single person watching from the outside. The person who was affected the most was the amorous Douluo Zhangxian. Having a title as such, he was most skilled in using emotions to control the battlefield. Hence, he felt the intensity of Wang Kong's emotions at the moment. The emotional changes were fully fused with his soul skill for the time being. The feeling was wonderful. There was no other feeling like it in this world. No other soul master possessed such an inherent ability like the amorous Douluo. If an ordinary soul master could fully fuse his emotions with his soul skill, it only meant that either he had a profound understanding or he had achieved a breakthrough. Was Wang Kong about to make a breakthrough now? In the next moment, everyone realized that they had guessed wrong. Wang Kong was not making a breakthrough. On the contrary, he gave up the fortuitous opportunity for a breakthrough. In fact, everything he experienced was vented into his Skyfrost sword, which was filled with emotional fluctuations. A silhouette emerged before him all of a sudden. It was illusory but vivid. She was dressed in a green suit, which was the uniform of Shrek Academy. Her long hair was tied into a ponytail. She looked exquisite. Her charming face cracked into a faint smile, and her huge eyes had a mischievous look. She looked at Wang Kong and pouted her red lips as if she was displeased. However, her displeasure immediately turned into a smile in the next moment. It turned out she was welcoming him with open arms. She then dived into his arms, whereupon they hugged each other tightly. Wang Kong was in a trance. The entire 9 palace box was completely frozen as well. It had turned into a world of solid ice. At the moment, everything seemed eternal. The Skyfrost sword turned into frost and snow filling the space and fusing into the wintry scene. Wang Kong opened his arms to hug the person before him tightly. The woman had transformed into a lifelike ice sculpture the moment they embraced. She leaned close to his chest. Similarly, the transformed monarch's bar emperor had become a part of the ice sculpture's background. Everything was frozen still at the moment. The bar emperor, which had transformed from the transformed monarch, did not have a human's facial features. Yet, one could clearly see that its eyes were filled with terror and fear. It never expected mankind to possess such abilities and be capable of fighting back in so many different ways. Nevertheless, everything was frozen still in solid ice at present. The icy cold produced by a limit Douluo ranked powerhouse who had sacrificed his life and used his emotions to fuse with his yearning and apply the thought concretization was out of this world. Up till that final moment, there was only longing and affection in his eyes. In that icy cold world, his gaze was no longer icy cold nor in pain anymore. There was only love. In this instant, the Skyfrost dragon ice was frozen for eternity. Tang Wulin had been trying real hard to control his emotions all this time. He could not refrain himself anymore, but to allow his tears to stream down his face. Ever since his first meeting with Wang Kong, teacher Wu had always been his idol. He was embodied as the white robes and blue sword, sky ice and snow cold, Wang Kong. He was also the person who brought Tang Wulin to embark on his journey to become a powerhouse and step into the higher ranks of Shrek Academy. The bond between Tang Wulin and Wang Kong was no longer a teacher-student relationship. In his heart, Wang Kong was not just a teacher, but also an elder brother. In fact, there was even a hint of the fatherly figure in him. It was his first time seeing Wang Kong's affectionate gaze, which was so sweet and gentle. At that moment, everything had become frozen. In any case, he clearly felt that Wang Kong was happy. All this while, teacher Wu suffered a lot and was under a lot of stress which came from deep within his heart. He was quiet and reserved, sealing himself in icy coldness. Tang Wulin could still remember the past when Wang Kong brought him to the graveyard and the sorrow Wang Kong felt when he looked at the tombstone. At the time, he only knew where teacher Wu's grief came from. Till now, he had yet to learn what happened to teacher Wu. He truly felt that his teacher was finally relieved of his burden when everything became frozen. His teacher, otherwise known as the white robes and blue sword, sky ice and snow cold, will always be the idol in Tang Wulin's heart. Clang. The 9 palace box shattered. A large cube of ice dropped from the sky. In a flash, the body Douluo ruling caught a huge block of ice in his arms. The gigantic ice block over 100 meters in length was filled with an inconceivable cold energy. It seemed like a glacier from ancient times which had been frozen eternally. A golden radiance flashed once, and Tang Wuling had made his way to a inside. He received the ice block from a Ruang. Tang Wuling immediately felt the rich emotions emanating from the ice block when his hands came into contact with the ice. The ice block was extremely cold, yet he felt the passionate love and emotional fluctuation within it. It was precisely the love bursting forth like an oil blowout which made the ice block solid and icy cold. Despite the transformed monarch's cultivation base, it was completely defeated and killed in a split second. The emotions emanating from the ice touched Tang Wuling's heart deeply. Tears streamed down his face. Yet at this very moment, the sorrow he felt was not that intense. On the contrary, he realized how painful it had been for Wang Kong to stay alive. Just like the Holy Spirit Douluo, they had lost their lovers, and it made living in this world way more painful than death. They did not have huge hearts, for their hearts could only have a lover each. They chose to leave the world to return to their loved ones. Perhaps it was an escape for them. The golden dragon wings flapped, carrying Tang Wuling back to his comrades with the ice block in his hand. The ice block was condensed from a limit Douluo with his 4-word battle armor. His life and true love formed the foundation. It was an ice block which would never melt till eternity, and would be kept in Shrek for good. He placed the ice block carefully on the ground. A golden radiance flashed once in Tang Wuling's hand. The golden dragon spear appeared in his grasp. With tears streaming down his eyes and the tip of the spear shaking, he began to carve something on the corner of the ice block. Chapter 19. Oh, only love. Wang Kong was the dean of Shrek Academy's outer court. He was my teacher. From the first day I met him, he had always been my idol. White robes and blue sword, sky ice and snow cold. He dedicated his entire life to Shrek, and his heart to his beloved in his arms. Skyfrost was his martial soul, and Longbing was his lover. I hope that you will be reunited with Grand Teacher in heaven. There's no coldness in heaven anymore, only love. If the ice can freeze everything, I hope the love between the both of you will be everlasting. Your disciple, Tang Wuling. Each vibration made by the golden dragon spear left a clear, distinct inscription. The writing was filled with Tang Wuling's deep affection for Wang Kong. There's no pain in heaven, only the love for each other. The Shrek 7 monsters were all standing by Tang Wuling's side at the moment. Every single one of them had tears running down their cheeks. Shishi and Shu Shao were sobbing profusely. In the past, together with Tang Wuling, they were taught by Wang Kong. They had a particularly close relationship with Wang Kong. Yet, they did not expect their teacher to turn himself into an ice sculpture in the end. A person who was still alive a moment ago had left them forever. Wuling. Meanwhile, a sobbing voice was heard. Tang Wuling turned his head and saw Tang Yimeng approaching him accompanied by Zhang Yuren. Senior sister disciple, my deepest condolences to you. Tang Wuling sounded a little hoarse. He had no idea how to console Tang Yimeng. It felt as if anything he said at present would be useless, since he could not even console himself. Tang Yimeng took a deep breath in an attempt to suppress her emotions. She said to Tang Wuling, it's a conspiracy. They are planning a conspiracy. Before Brother Lan died, he tried to warn me. The abyssal powerhouse that he was fighting against revealed something to him. Due to the dire situation, he could only relay the limited information which was meant for you. Huh? Tang Wuling was taken aback. He had witnessed the situation too. At the time, Lan Muzi was struggling to convey something, but he was interrupted by the abyssal powerhouse each time. Tang Yimeng said, the abyssal creature thought it could interrupt Brother Lan's communication, but it had no idea that we had established a unique communication method between us. We've been dating since we joined Shrek Academy and had spent so many years cultivating together. Brother Lan has a set of saber techniques which can be used to communicate messages. It was supposed to be a fun thing that we did whenever we were bored. So, Brother Lan had used these saber techniques to relay the message to me during his final moments earlier. What did senior brother disciple say? Tang Wuling least expected Lan Muzi to be sending out messages during his final moments. Tang Yunmeng regained her calm once again before speaking in a clear voice. In spite of the difficulty of the situation at the time, Brother Lan managed to convey some limited information. There were a few messages. One was regarding the conspiracy. There seems to be some kind of conspiracy behind the bet. Besides, it's possible that the Demon Empress is unaware of this conspiracy. He didn't know the specific details. I suspect that the abyssal plane is not suffering from the death of these abyssal creatures. Also, it's highly probable that his opponent isn't dead yet. After listening to her, Tang Wuling maintained his calm. He then nodded slowly. Thank you, senior sister disciple. I hear you. Lan Muzi had sacrificed his life, just so he could leave the message. Shrek Academy had suffered way too many losses in this war. It made Tang Wuling even more resolute in the depths of his heart at the moment. Elder Long, Godmother, Teacher Wu, Senior Brother Disciple, all of you won't die in vain. I'll lead everyone to achieve the final victory regardless. We'll surely defeat them regardless of the conspiracy. I promise you that. Tang Wuling grasped the golden dragon spear in his hand tightly. At this very moment, his eyes turned fully golden. A golden glint flickered in his eyes. Boom. Meanwhile, the last 9 palace box in the battle suddenly gave out a loud, earth-shattering boom. The underworld king Douluo Haluos's body was crushed in the violent boom, turning into scraps of flesh scattered all over. Kayang Diding, on the other hand, appeared after the grey-black radiance faded away. His right arm and leg were gone as well. In fact, the right side of his body was withering. His wounds did not gush fresh blood. Nonetheless, the 9 palace box was shattered. The powerful absolute immobility had finally disintegrated. Kayang Diding remained hovering in the sky. Although he only had half a life left, he was determined to stay alive. Yes, he had won. He had defeated the underworld king Douluo Haluosa through and through, even though he paid a heavy price for it as well. In any event, killing a quasi-god was easier said than done. He held the coiling dragon staff in his left hand. With his back straight as a ramrod, his whole person was still emitting the combat heaven and earth consciousness. Even the people from Shrek Academy, who were his adversaries in the past, could not help but express their respect for him when they saw his emancipated, mighty silhouette. Kayang Diding was an almighty of his generation in the past. He showed everyone that the spirit pagoda was principled, and he still held the honor of the Kayang clan. Mankind's legion was victorious in this round of the battle. All 9 of the opposing team members were dead. On the other hand, Mankind's legion also suffered severe losses. The holy spirit Douluo Yali, the sun with Douluo Lan Muzi, the Skyfrost dragon Ice Wu Kong, Kayang Dongfang, and the other 4 great powerhouses had all fallen. In addition, there was the crippled Kayang Diding. To be exact, only 4.5 people from their team made it out alive. Out of the 3 rounds of bets, Mankind's legion had achieved victory in 2 rounds, although they suffered severe losses in the 2 rounds which included the 4 limit Douluos, in addition to Lan Muzi and Wu Kong. The Holy Spirit cult and the Abyss paid a heavier price. Other than the Demon Empress, all the top-grade powerhouses in the Holy Spirit cult were completely wiped out. Both the Underworld Emperor and the Ghost Emperor had fallen. The Darkness Blood Demon and the Darkness Spell had died in the second battle as well. At present, the Demon Empress expression was truly unpleasant. Although she had an ominous presentiment that the battle's outcome would not be good, she did not expect it to be so bad. From her point of view, the Ghost Emperor was supposed to prevail in the battle against the Holy Spirit Douluo. The Ghost Emperor could then fight against the opposing team's limit Douluos following that. Obviously, she did not expect Shrek Academy to deploy their full strength during the second round by sending so many limit Douluos. She thought Shrek Academy would most likely group all the limit Douluos during the final round to attack her. It would certainly be stressful for her. The Demon Empress was the sole general, being the only person left from the Holy Spirit cult's 1 empress, 2 emperors, and the 4 great heavenly kings. The rest of the powerhouses had all died in battle. The Abyss loss was tremendous and tragic as well, including the second-ranked Spirit Monarch. There were more than 20 Abyssal leaders who had died in battle. Furthermore, the Abyssal levels where they came from had collapsed as well. It meant the entire Abyss was weakened, including the 5 great Monarch-ranked powerhouses, namely the Spirit Monarch, the Sage Monarch, the Transform Monarch, the Black Monarch, and the Bee Monarch. They were among the top 10, and they made up half of the full-strength army. Currently, a third of the Abyss strength was wiped out if the Abyssal Sage King was not considered. Following the death of the numerous Abyssal powerhouses, close to half of the ordinary Abyssal creatures had vanished. A large amount of the dense and rich Abyssal energy was devoured by Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear and Guyuna's silver dragon spear. They were each channeling the life force individually. Undoubtedly, Mankind's legion had gained the upper hand judging from the outcome of the battle. On the other hand, the most important battle was about to take place. Tang Wuling and Guyuna's ability to lead the Shrek 7 monsters to defeat the Demon Empress would ensure victory in this battle. Tang Wuling raised his head slowly. He felt restless as it had been a long time since he had been in the battle. He was eager to engage in the battle at present. His golden eyes stared at the Demon Empress in the distance. All of a sudden, he raised his head and let out a deafening dragon's roar. Chapter 1909. Do you really have the courage to meet my father? The dragon's roar shook all of Tula with its awesome magnificence like an irresistible force that could move mountains and overturn the seas. The numerous abyssal powerhouses standing behind the Demon Empress changed their expressions drastically. At the sound of the raging roar, fear and timidity radiated out of their bones, despite not having dragon-type bloodlines in their bodies. A clear, melodious, and fervent dragon's roar was heard soon afterward. It complemented Tang Wuling's vigorous roar and brought out the best of each other. The sound of both roars lingered in the air for a long time without fading. At the same time, Tang Wuling and Guyuna's aura strengthened exponentially. It felt as if they were trying to use the roars to fully unleash something that they had had to constantly suppress in their hearts. All of their inhibitions in the past were about to be opened up. Tang Wuling stretched out his left hand instinctively and held Guyuna's right hand. Their auras were purified as an incredible divine consciousness swept across the entire scene. 2 streams of golden and silver light shot straight into the sky. They transformed into enormous pillars of light that seemed to illuminate the entire Douluo continent. The Demon Empress expression finally changed. Although she had determined that Tang Wuling and Guyuna's abilities were rather formidable, she still had absolute confidence in herself. Regardless of how great her opponents were, they had only achieved divine origin spiritual power and could not possibly break through to god rank. Even if the Skycrosser Douluo was still there, he could only sustain the god rank for a brief moment, which was not enough to threaten her. Nevertheless, she could finally sense that something was wrong when the golden dragon moon song Tang Wuling and the silver dragon dancing Keeling Guyuna's roars complemented and bolstered one another. She was astonished to find that their auras had surpassed ordinary quasi-god rank during the synchronization process. Moreover, Tang Wuling still had the super divine weapon, the golden trident. Tang Wuling held Guyuna's hand and leapt up simultaneously. Their golden and silver dragon wings set off one another and carried their bodies high into the sky. They were so compatible with one another and got along so well together. The twin dragons were shining as they looked down upon the world. At that exact moment, Kayang's Hanting had regained consciousness in the spirit pagoda's camp. He caught sight of the scene, and the rage in his heart overwhelmed him. He grunted once before fainting again. The ghastly pale Kayang Diding could not help letting out a sigh upon seeing his great-grandson behaving like this. He raised his head to look up to the sky and thought to himself, perhaps the biggest mistake he made in his life was to spoil Kayang Dongfang by allowing him to fight against Shrek Academy. There was nothing that could resolve the blood feud. He could only hope that all his hard work and effort would be beneficial to the spirit pagoda. In any case, he saw the intimacy between Guyuna and Tang Wuling helplessly. The silver dragon princess obviously had the leadership and ability to take the spirit pagoda back to its glorious days. Yet, it seemed highly possible that she would fully embrace Shrek and the Tang sect. It would be increasingly difficult for the spirit pagoda to exist independently. Kayang Diding could only force a bitter smile. All this time, they were constantly figuring out ways to suppress Shrek Academy's reconstruction. Yet they had never expected that the person with most secrets was right by their side. When Guyuna killed the spirit monarch, Kayang Diding realized that her position as the spirit pagoda's pagoda master was firmly established. Not all the spirit pagoda's powerhouses were hostile to Shrek Academy and the Tang sect. They prioritized their own advancement with the spirit pagodas. It was baffling how many elite limit Douluos Shrek Academy possessed. It was far much better for them to form a good relationship with Shrek Academy than to remain enemies. The only thing that Kayang Diding felt relieved about was that Kayang King Feng and his lineage managed to leave in time. On the other hand, the Kayang clan's status in the spirit pagoda would most probably be relegated to history after this war. The Demon Empress flew forward slowly. Purple and gold light formed a gigantic fan at her back, shielding her from the majestic pressure unleashed by Tang Wuling and Guyuna. Naturally, only abyssal powerhouses moved forward with her. There were 8 of them, all emitting different auras. The abyssal warrior with the strongest aura was standing next to the Demon Empress, its body glowing purple. The Demon Empress emitted purple gold energy while it was emitting blue-purple radiance from its body. Moreover, it was clad in a suit of rare blue-purple armor and it was even holding a weapon in its hand. The weapon was an enormous halberd. One could not see its face under the helmet. It was completely pitch black with only a pair of eyes glistening with purple glint. Hint. Its status was fully displayed as it was permitted to stand side by side with the Demon Empress. Its status was even superior to the Sage Monarch on the Abyssal Plane. It ranked third and it was known as the Intense Monarch. Other than the Abyssal Sage King and the Spirit Monarch, there was the Intense Monarch. After the Spirit Monarch perished in battle, it could be said that the Intense Monarch was the most powerful monarch left on the Abyssal Plane. The Demon Empress looked at Tang Wuling and Guiyuna with a burning gaze. Then, she turned toward the 6 Shrek monsters and the Gale Saber demon Sima Jinkai as they rose to the battlefield with them. Judging their overall abilities, they did not appear to be as impressive as the previous team from Shrek Academy and the Spirit Pagoda. However, the Demon Empress was well aware that these 9 people before her could very possibly be even more difficult to finish off. The root cause was still Tang Wuling and Guiyuna. She could already sense it. It was highly possible that the combination of Tang Wuling and Guiyuna was not as simple as 1 + 1 was equal to 2. The result would certainly be more than that. Otherwise, their auras would not be complementing one another so well. It's very likely that this is the final battle, said the Demon Empress coldly as she looked at Tang Wuling. She was right. The victory and defeat of this match would certainly affect the trend of this entire war. Even though mankind's side still had numerous limit Douluos, no one on the scene was capable of stopping the Demon Empress reign if Tang Wuling and Guiyuna failed to defeat her. Tang Wuling said indifferently, yes, this could very well be the final battle. The Abyssal Plane invaded our Douluo world. After this war has ended, we will certainly head to the Abyss and look for the Abyssal Sage King to settle our debts in the near future. The Demon Empress eyes flickered. It seems like you are very confident of defeating me. Huh? Tang Wuling smiled calmly. That's right. The Holy Spirit cult will end here and now. The Demon Empress chuckled. Very well. I would like to see where you get your confidence from. Don't worry. I will strip your souls from your corpses even after I've killed all of you. Then, I shall let all of you bear witness to how I devour this world and make a clean kill of all your family and friends. I've already thought this through. Since Tang San passed down his sea god's trident to you, then it means that he can't possibly return again. He will certainly be able to feel it when I kill you. What a waste that I don't get to see him suffer with my eyes. Tang Wuling grunted in disdain. Do you think that is unfortunate? Do you really have the courage to meet my father? The Demon Empress expression changed, and her gaze turned to people all of a sudden. Die, little boy. As she spoke, the purple gold radiance around her body suddenly burst like an eruption. It turned into a mighty current that lashed toward Tang Wuling and the others. Tang Wuling raised the golden dragon spear in his hand. The Shrek monsters and Sima Jinkai behind him swiftly adjusted their battle formation, forming a single file. Guiyuna reacted slightly slower than the rest, but she immediately maneuvered herself behind Tang Wuling. 9 people stood in a line with Tang Wuling as the leader. This was their teamwork, and none could compare to the Shrek 7 monsters in Shrek Academy. They went to the academy, grew up and fought against formidable enemies together. In fact, even all their forward battle armors were forged from their joint efforts. They had been a unit for some time, so they needed no verbal exchanges. The slightest gesture was enough for them to work together. Chapter 19 10 Star Chain. Speckles of starlight shimmered and transformed into a chain of stars instantly, linking the 9 of them together. Tang Wuling could feel intense soul power radiating from his back and coursing through his body. The golden dragon spear in his hand began to glow and turned razor sharp. Tang Wuling swung the spear and cut out a golden light ray in the sky. The fine ray of light stretched rapidly as if it was trying to link heaven and earth. As the thick purple gold radiance rushed at him, it split like parting waves and skimmed past the sides of Tang Wuling's line formation. Tang Wuling and the rest remained floating in the same spot without budging at all. The Demon Empress was stunned for a moment upon seeing her attack neutralized so easily. She was a god-ranked powerhouse, so all of her attacks were of that standard. However, she felt oppressed when she saw Tang Wuling launch his attack after fusing 9 into 1. No wonder he chose the companions whose abilities were far below those of limit Douluos. In fact, some of them had not even achieved hyper Douluo rank and were only relying on their forward battle armor. It was apparent that the teamwork between this group and Tang Wuling could not be achieved by those limit Douluos. At limit Douluo rank, every single person was a complete unit. It would be extremely difficult for limit Douluos to work together as a team because their individual fighting capacity was too great. That was not the case for Tang Wuling and his companions. They worked together harmoniously and complemented one another. Following the Demon Empress attack, the numerous abyssal powerhouses charged forward as well with the intense monarch leading at the forefront. Its body seemed to be gliding in the air as it traveled toward Tang Wuling in a straight line. It swept a halberd in its hand horizontally, conjuring a stream of faint purple radiance that reached Tang Wuling instantaneously. Tang Wuling slowly tilted the golden dragon spear in his hand upward. The movement appeared to be not too swift, but it was aimed right at the spot where the halberd generated its power. Ding! There was a piercing sound and Tang Wuling's body shuddered. All 9 people from his side, including himself, stepped backward simultaneously. Not only that, they felt as if their skin was quivering inside their armor. What was that? Tang Wuling's expression changed drastically. They could transfer their soul power to each other and even share injuries due to the Star Chains effect. It could be said that this was the Shrek 7 monster's most powerful form. Nevertheless, the momentary collision actually made them recoil despite the opponent not being amplified by the other powerhouses. What sort of ability was that? They had Tang Wuling and Guiyuna on their team, 2 elite warriors. It was god power. Yes, in terms of pure power, the Intense Monarch had actually achieved god rank already. It was no weaker than the Demon Empress. The Abyssal Plane had such a powerhouse. All sorts of queries arose in Tang Wuling's mind instantly. Without a doubt, he could fully confirm that this was god power. The Spirit Monarch had a breakthrough in its spiritual power rank, yet its soul power was inadequate. On the other hand, the Intense Monarch's spiritual power had yet to achieve divine origin rank, but it was obvious that its power level was already at god rank. No other person in recent memory had achieved such a feat on the Douluo continent other than the Demon Empress. Moreover, there was something especially peculiar about the Intense Monarch's halberd attack. It felt as if the power of its halberd could not be weakened by their forward battle armor. Tang Wuling had obviously blocked its attack, yet he still felt the opponent's purple radiance penetrate his body. Had it not been divided between the 9 of them, that one attack could have very possibly caused some mild injuries to him. Tang Wuling swept away the Intense Monarch's halberd, but its attack did not stop just because of that. It made a half turn and swung the halberd at Tang Wuling once again. It was as if it paid no attention to the support of the numerous powerhouses behind Tang Wuling. Meanwhile, the Demon Empress drew near as well. She moved swiftly and arrived at the side of Tang Wuling's team with a mere sway of her body. Her hands pressed onto the air, and at once, purple gold radiance surged akin to tidewater. It transformed into a gigantic vortex that tugged at everyone from the side. The cooperation between the Demon Empress and the Intense Monarch was not considered harmonious, but it was executed perfectly. One of them fought forcefully from the front while the other disrupted from the side. The crucial part was their god-ranked abilities. Their attacks could be lethal to their opponents. Silver radiance bloomed out like a pool of overflowing mercury. It enshrouded Tang Wuling's team of 9. In the next moment, all of them had been moved 100 meters away. They dodged the Intense Monarch's halberd and also broke free from the Demon Empress tide attack. It was a group teleportation. The silver dragon spear emitted dazzling radiance. Guiyuna placed her hand on Tang Wuling's back while her other hand raised her spear. It had been a very long time since she fought alongside Tang Wuling. Even though their opponents were so powerful, there was only excitement in their hearts. They were fearless. Speckles of starlight shimmered as the dazzling starlight was unleashed, turning the sky dark suddenly. The sparks could be seen so clearly. Shu Shaoen had raised her star staff. Tang Wuling thrust the golden dragon spear into the air. It was used to touch the sky just as they were teleported away. Guiyuna's group teleportation was not unleashed without a purpose. Of course, the position where they reappeared was precisely the epicenter of the other charging abyssal powerhouses. Just as Tang Wuling and Guiyuna were the peak powerhouses of this team, the Demon Empress and Intense Monarch were the only powerful ones from their team. In fact, none of the remaining abyssal powerhouses were even at monarch rank. Hence, all the numerous abyssal powerhouses could do when faced with Tang Wuling's spear attack was to flee in all directions. A single abyssal king at the front did not manage to run in time. It could only brace itself by raising the twin hammers in its hands in an attempt to block Tang Wuling's golden dragon spear. Poof! The spear penetrated the hammers and the Abyssal King's chest as if it was passing through tofu. The strong devouring power of his spear consumed its life force into nothingness in an instant. At the same time, Guiyuna also used the silver dragon spear to pierce forward. As she thrust the spear, her purple eyes turned as deep as 2 vortices all of a sudden. She gazed at the Intense Monarch gliding toward them at full speed. The Intense Monarch seemed to be caught in a daze for a moment. It had meant to swiftly swing its halberd, yet its movements had slowed down a little. Only the Demon Empress managed to make it in time. Guiyuna's silver dragon spear abruptly elongated. The tip of the silver dragon spear burst forth with a 7-colored light consisting of blue, yellow, red, green, silver, white and black hues overlapping one another and covering the spear. The 7 elements complemented and enhanced one another in layers. The Demon Empress stretched out a finger to touch the spear tip. At once, the 7 elements exploded and turned into sparks of light that rained down from the sky. However, the Demon Empress was still held back for a moment. Yu Yuna relied on her own efforts to keep the demon empress and the intense monarch at bay temporarily so they could not seize the opportunity to attack Tang Wuling when he was devouring the abyssal king. Meanwhile, Tang Wuling made a half-turn. He pointed the golden dragon spear forward and a terrifying aura burst forth from his body. It was an arrogant spirit that could combat heaven and earth. Not long ago, Tang Wuling relied on this aura to startle Kaiangyu Dongfang so that he was unable to match Tang Wuling. It was the Forbid Heaven Earth, Dragon Emperor fight from the Dragon Emperor Forbidden Law. Tang Wuling's aura augmented the Shrek 7 monsters, Yu Yuna, and Sima Jinkai. They felt as if their blood was boiling. They had an intense impulse to dominate the opponents regardless of who they were. It was a spiritual attack. It made the intense monarch pause momentarily. The intense monarch had just recovered from Yu Yuna's spiritual disturbance when the Dragon Emperor fight made its strikes weaker. Under such circumstances, Tang Wuling thrust the golden dragon spear forward. Thousands of spear tips combined as one. The spear tips surrounded the demon empress and the intense monarch during the contraction process. The spear spirit realm deserved its fame. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.